Hello, everyone. Today I'd like to talk about the Beatles and really in comparison with the individuals' solo careers post Beatles. Now, I've been listening to quite a few albums of Lennon, McCartney, Starr, and Harrison. I think I've listened to most to this day. I have a few personally myself, and I was able to procure a few later recently, and kind of giving a listen to all of them and a few multiple times. I kind of like to compare their career solo versus when they were together with the Beatles. And now I like to start off by saying, and this is, I think, pretty obvious. I think most people would agree with me on this, is that George Harrison's debut album, All Things Must Pass, is probably the best post Beatles debut album, period. I mean, you compare it to McCartney's debut album, which I think it's a self-titled album or something. I don't even know what song was on there. I think it was just bad. I forgot. I don't even remember the songs on there. That's how bad I think it was. Lennon, Plastic Ono Band. People like it. I think Mother's on it. I'm really so. I think he's just kind of on another dimension, spiritual level or something. I don't know. It's just not my cup of tea. And Ringo Starr's, I don't even know the name of it. I think it was just a bunch of covers for his debut album. So, no doubt about it. I think everyone's going to say this. Some may say the Plastic Ono Band, but not even close. It's definitely George Harrison. And I'm going to argue that not only it's the best post-Beatles debut album of all time, to me, I think this is the best overall album of all time. A close second would be, to me, no, there's two close seconds. 2A and 2B. This 2A would be Double Fantasy, which I think a lot of people don't like. I have that on CD. I thought it was pretty good. Double Fantasy. And Band on the Run. So it's this one. Let me get this one out. I actually have it. I have it on CD, but a different location. I also have it on vinyl. So this is 2A, 2B for me. Ringo, I've listened to, I remember listening to a few of his albums, and I listened to once, and that's pretty much it. So I don't think he has any good, strong album, period. That's my opinion, okay? So when you look at their careers, and I'm not trying to make a comparison that, oh, George Harrison was the better Beatle. I think McCartney and Lennon, if you look at their solo body of works, those two are the stronger than than George Harrison, and definitely stronger than Ringo's. Whether you like Paul McCartney or Lennon, is more of a taste of style of music. I think for some reason, I think Lennon became more softer than McCartney. McCartney stuck with the rock stuff, where Lennon was more like balladry, and he has some pop upbeat stuff as well, but he was really on the softer side, but to be honest. And I guess to me that's more like what type of style music you prefer. And it's hard to do Lennon as well, because obviously his career got cut short, his solo career, for obvious reasons. If he was able to live longer, maybe there'd be an output body work, who knows, that might even be better than what he outputted back then, when he was still alive. And if you want to get my opinion, I think Paul McCartney came out ahead of John Lennon in terms of music, in my opinion, from a solo career standpoint. even with John Lennon cut short, let's say from McCartney to and John Lennon's until um, John Lennon was assassinated. If you look at that body of music, I think Paul McCartney was still better than John Lennon. Again, in my opinion. And we're talking about that. When you look at George Harrison, besides his debut album, after that, there's no other way to put it, but it's been pretty ass. I mean, he didn't really put out anything since his debut album until Cloud 9, which I also have. And really, Cloud 9 was okay as an overall album compared, relatively speaking, to his other albums, sans his first debut album. His debut album. But damn, I got my mind set on you. This song is probably my favorite from George Harrison, and it's a cover too, believe it or not. But it's, I don't know why it's my favorite from George Harrison, that is. So, you know, but from growing up with the Beatles and post-Beatles careers, John Lennon, McCartney, and to a certain extent George Harrison, I knew mainly from accumulated the greatest hits. So, this is my first ever Paul McCartney album. Okay, All the Best. Now, I also have his more definitive collection, Hits in History, but this is the better one. Hands down, this is the better one because I think later on, Paul McCartney, all his like compilations omit Say Say Say. Now I could be wrong from his recent ones. I haven't really seen it, but I think it's because his feud with Michael Jackson, with the record label buying out the Beatles records and so forth. I think he just tried to get rid of Michael Jackson altogether. But man, I love Say Say Say, and it's on this one. This is probably, to me, this is outside of Band on the Run as being his regular album, studio album. I think this is really the best thing Paul McCartney to get. And then for John Lennon, I have his collection, his original one, and then this one, the very best of John Lennon. So if you notice, besides, and I have Double Fantasy on CD, but besides Double Fantasy on CD, and then I think Band on the Run on CD, and then George Harrison, the two CDs you see, everything I've got of them are pretty much compilation. Even Ringo Starr, which I don't have on here, I have two of his compilations. Photograph being the most recent one, which I don't have here, and Blast from Your Past. That's also, I think, is his first greatest hits. I guess what I'm trying to get at is for me, after listening to a lot of the albums post Beatles career, and I've also listened, Paul McCartney especially, I've listened to like Wings Over America, which I have on record, Venus and Mars, and this one, Red Rose Speedway. So I have his albums, some of it, and I've listened to majority of them. I'm going to say this. Post-Beatles career, each individual Beatle really weren't good at, especially Paul McCartney, in my opinion, weren't really good at albums anymore. I think they're more singles. Definitely you could say that for, I could definitely say that for Ringo and John Lennon. Again, his career got cut short, but I still think he's a singles guy. And to me, Paul McCartney is, from all his output that I've listened to me, he's more of a singles guy. And it's strange. The reason why I want to mention that is, you know, when they were together, all four together with the Beatles, right? When they were the Beatles, they're exactly the opposite. Now, when I first tried to get into the Beatles, and me being a casual listener and a greatest hits person, I always try to get their red and blue albums, right? The red one being the early greatest hits, and then the blue one being the greatest hits of their later years. I don't think I ever got, I think I got the red one, but I never got the blue one. But to pretty much everyone who knows the Beatles and listens to the Beatles, greatest hits is not the thing. You need to get all their albums, right? Because each album is so damn good. I mean, even the non-hits are so good. They're literally a true album artist. From conception, from conceiving the album, the songs they put on there, how they're arranged, things like that. They're truly the top of the top, cream of the crop. From when you think about musicians, artists that make albums. I mean, Beatles are Beatles. That's the gold standard, hands down. Okay, I don't think any other artist I can think of make albums as good as the Beatles. So pretty much you have to get all their main albums. Okay. Now, even their worst album, to me, it's Yellow Submarine. I'm sorry if people love Yellow Submarine. I don't like it. Yellow Submarine's okay. The concept itself, they just, they're just way out there. I don't know what was going on. It's not my thing. To me, it's better than a lot of people don't like Beatles for Sale or With the Beatles, or I'm okay with that from an album. They might not have like super strong hits or anything like that, but at least it's to me it's a good album. Yellow Submarine is just way out there. But what I'm trying to get at is the worst Beatles album as an album, and to me it's Yellow Submarine, would be any other artist, majority of artists dream to have an album like Yellow Submarine. I mean, because that would be, it's a good album to a lot of people's eyes, right? That's what I'm getting at. It's like, a B side or C side, if there's even such a thing of a Beatles record, would be an A side on most artists' catalog. So anyway, it's kind of weird that, and what I'm getting at is the Beatles were the top of the top, the best in making albums. However, when they broke up, and you can listen to every Paul McCartney, John Lennon, George Harrison, or Ringo Starr's solo albums, they're just not that good. I mean, you got the debut album of George Harrison, which is good, and the others like Band on a Run and so forth. But it's kind of, relatively speaking, they're good in their own right when you compare it to the other albums that Paul McCartney put out by himself, that John Lennon put out himself, that George Harrison definitely put out himself. They're better than anything else they pretty much put out. And even then, to me, I don't think they stack up well against any Beatles albums like the low tier. Like, I think they're, each one I mentioned, their best album might be better than Yellow Submarine, but the main top, their peak albums, it doesn't come close. Even Band on the Run, I don't think comes close to, anything like, Sgt. Pepper's or anything like that. It doesn't come close. Where All Things Must Pass doesn't come close to any of that either. And you would think they would make great albums, and it just, to me, never came out that way. They all became more of a singles artist rather than an album artist. And I think because being solo is the case, and to me, it's where the sum as a whole is greater. The whole is greater than the sum of the parts, or something like that. That term. I think that is the perfect example of that, where when they're together, they're better, especially in creating albums, than when they're split apart. Even though they're all good individually in their own right, they can't create that same magic as when they were together with the Beatles. And I'm talking about from their start, when everything was going well, to like when they hate each other and things like that and try to break up and things like that. Even then, they were still creating great albums. Once they split up, I don't think there's anything, that magic was gone. To me, that magic's gone. You can say what you want with, now we're talking about in the 70s, music's changed. Sure, they do. But even then, the music they put out from an album perspective just wasn't cohesive. It wasn't strong. Rarely any hits. Like McCartney for sure. Outside Band on the Run, um, every album I listened to, after one hit or two hits on that album, everything is just kind of one ear and out the other. It's not memorable. It's just filler. It's really filler to me. Songs that Paul McCartney put out in majority of his albums. So, um, you know, even George Harrison. I think the reason why George Harrison, his debut album was so good, was because a lot of that music was really supposed to be with the Beatles, when he was still with the Beatles. And if they had not breaking up, I think a lot of those songs would have made a Beatles record or two, and no doubt about it, those would have been strong as well. So I think he like saved up, whether intentionally or not, for that debut album of his, and it's basically almost, you could consider it like an extension of a Beatles album, and it's all by George Harrison. I think that's why it's so strong. And then afterwards, it's just it's just bad until Cloud Nine, and even then, I'm mad that it's. I know that John Lennon, McCartney, everyone really followed them. I think it's more of the fans that really want them to be successful, and they would take anything, especially like John Lennon's debut album. I don't know why people liked it. I think it's just bad. But I think it's just people wanting, John Lennon to be successful. People wanting, like, McCartney, George Harrison's debut album, great no matter what. But what I'm getting at is people wanting them to be successful because they were Beatles. That even the music is mid to like they still buy it anyway. They still think it's good, even though when you, as a listener, like not having any of that sentiment of the Beatles, not having been born or grown up through any of that period, solo or with the Beatles, I don't have any of that sentiment, so I can pretty much listen to it objectively, and it's just not there. The magic's gone, no matter what. Now, is that a bad thing? No. I actually like when they broke up. You can hear the soul. You can see how they progress and how, like for me, not knowing much about the Beatles as a kid, you know, I didn't know what songs were Lennon, what songs were McCartney, what Harrison. Even when they're like, they tell you like who wrote it. Outside of George Harrison, it's always like Lennon, McCartney. I didn't know who actually wrote it, who's their song, until much later on when I'm from listening to John Lennon, Paul McCartney, and then recognizing the voices as well, like who's singing, who's the lead singer on Beatles songs. I can understand who did what when they became solo and understanding each person's solo career. And it's a good thing from a listener perspective, to know how they progress and how they did things, how they contributed to when they were as part of the Beatles group. So that's a great thing. I just think that as talented as each musician was, from playing, from writing music to actually singing and things like that, can't take anything away from when they were with the Beatles. When they're solo, you get to even examine them even better, because now you can isolate each individual artist, see what they do, how they make music, things like that. And I have a better perspective and more appreciative of each artist's solo career. And just wanted to bring that up. Having listened to basically each Beatle as a solo artist, and knowing kind of, or at least in my opinion, seeing the difference between when they were together with the Beatles than when they were separate. So anyway, that term again. Uh, there's sum is greater than the parts. Or what? God, I can't believe I don't even remember that term, but I think you understand what I mean. So anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if you think I'm crazy that McCartney is more of a singles artist and majority of his albums suck. I'm not gonna say suck. Suck is too strong. I think they're just mid. There are some sucky albums, but I think he's just mid. He's each album you might get one hit and two hit and everything is just filler to me. John Lennon again, his is a bit short, his career as a solo artist, but even then, outside of Double Fantasy for me, and really Double Fantasy because I think at least a quarter, maybe a third of the songs on there are hits, so that's why I like it. But nothing that a greatest hits package can't cover, right? And that's the thing. There's solo artists. Each individual artist, you go for the greatest hits. With the Beatles, you don't. You go with their albums. So anyway, let me know what you think. All right, thanks. Bye.